cut off my ear, Ian. I mean,
I don't think that him licking the ends of his brushes, which had a lot of lead in, really helped.
Yeah.
But I think he was bipolar.
Yeah. But, you know, if we go on the basis that was manic depression, like, that's what I'm saying. Like, there's so many... I've done so much research, and it was predominantly when I was ill. I haven't actually really done much research since I've been well, because... Well, not between me and you. This is going out to the world. But, like, I was having symptoms for 14 years, so on and off for 14 years, and
yeah.
I wasn't well in that time. Like, I actually look back at it now.
I was doing things as a kid which just weren't right. And now in hindsight, I realise were indicators, but no one picked up on them because people just didn't have the vocabulary. They didn't understand. Speaking about research, have you ever read The Ultimate Guide, Bipolar Disorder, The Ultimate Guide, Sarah Owen and Amanda Saunders?
No.
It's great. By far, it's one of the best texts I've ever come across, and I would recommend it to anyone with bipolar, anyone who knows anyone or is related to anyone with bipolar, or just anyone interested. It's written, the format is written in a series of questions and answers. So it's very difficult, it's very easy to dip into and reference without reading it necessarily cover to cover, but I read it cover to cover. There's a foreword at the beginning by Paul Abbott, who is bipolar and wrote Shameless, or the original Shameless series.
Wow.
He's award-winning as well.
Amazing. That's great info. If I'm honest, I'm not going to put links on there, but you've done it yourself. I'm going to put Bipolar Disorder, The Ultimate Guide as a book, and then Paul Abbott as a director, would you say?
No, he's primarily a writer.
Okay. So I'll put that there, and people can...
He won awards for Clocking Off, which I think was a BBC series. But he's an acclaimed writer. He's well known for it. You see, when I got my proper diagnosis, initially I was diagnosed with clinical depression, which I had no problem with.
What do you mean you didn't have a problem with it?
With the diagnosis.
Right.
My first real bad... even in my childhood, I had instances where I was miserable for periods of time, but nothing like before my first suicide attempt, which was in my mid-20s. Yeah, it was. I was diagnosed with clinical depression. Like I say, I had absolutely no problem with that whatsoever. Then heard something about bipolar, mentioned it to my GP, and she said, oh no, she said, talking to people with bipolar disorder, it's like they're on drugs. Let's just say I'm not a stranger to that, because I have an addictive nature.
Yeah.
I used to be an alcoholic. And now, when she said that, I accepted that. I thought that was fine. Then after my second suicide attempt, I had a consultation, I had a review, and my housemate was with me for emotional support, and she had heard a couple of things about bipolar disorder, and she asked the psychiatrist whether I had bipolar disorder, or was there any chance of it, and he said no, he said clinical depression, lots of symptoms. It was only after I was put on a waiting list after my second suicide attempt for psychotherapy, which was 3.5 years, that I started to see a psychotherapist, and she was great. And I now know that I had a manic episode. I mean, I remember walking in bold as brass and saying to her, "You're very attractive. I'm not surprised that people fall in love with their psychiatrist." She looked like Ulrika Johnson. And I could see the cogs going, because obviously if you've got a patient who is infatuated, you have to change, the person seeing the patient, because it's unhealthy. It's not going to help the process. But that's not actually what I was saying. So I could see the cogs going. Unfortunately, she didn't deem it too risky, so we continued. But I was very, very, very manic.
And now you're married to her, right, Ian?
Sorry?
And now you're married to her, right?
No. That would be really unethical.
Yeah, it would be really, really bad practice.
Yeah.
No, it's really interesting you say that, actually, because, and there's a girl, I'm not going to mention her name, but if she's listening, she knows exactly who she is. This was when I went into Lambeth Hospital, because I was sectioned in 2000 and on June the 13th, 2019. I can tell you all the timings of that day as well, but I won't bore you. But I walked in, and after having, been in a holding cell for 13 hours and then having had about an hour's sleep, I woke up to a guy, and I'll give you the context of the story, because why not? I woke up to a guy who said, and I want to get it right because I can't say I'll remember these words till the day I die unless I get it completely right, but what essentially he said was, well, that's the second time I've woken up in a pool of my own and then a naughty word for urine. Which I nearly said, Ian, and I can't say that on this podcast, but I think we all know what it is. And I literally was laughing so much. And then I think he was in a state of either psychosis or delusion, I'm not sure, whatever it is. I don't know what he was suffering from, but it could have been bipolar, Ian. And the reason I say that is because I was and I was in a very, very heightened state of mania. I couldn't work out whether if he was unwell or not, right? Yeah. And I think that's important to know with the bipolar. So then he essentially said to me after he said that, he said, look, they want to take you to Lambeth Hospital, but if you wait a second, I can speak to my lawyer and she can get us both out of this situation. So obviously in that state of despair, I'm like, yeah, mate, whatever. Yeah, I know I'm in a holding cell right now, and the police definitely told me that I'd be out by 4:00 in the afternoon, and we're already on, 4:30 in the morning the next morning. And I essentially was then like, this guy's not going to help. I still, as well, Ian, I still have a piece of paper that says, and this is no word, I literally, because I checked it as well recently, it says, once you're done with and this was from the same guy, he said, once you're done with your phone call, I just need to borrow your phone to make, it was something like, I need to make 2,500 quick phone calls. Right? 2,500, like,
quick ones.
I'm on the phone a lot, Ian. My call list is silly amounts, right? Even B says it all the time, right? But I promise you this, like, 2,500 calls. So anyway, after I knew that the lawyer wasn't coming, this is also a man who openly admitted, and again, like, I'm not poking fun at this because the guy wasn't well, and I'm being sensitive 100%. But the guy was in this kind of state where he said they weren't paying me any attention, so he rubbed his own feces against the wall. He said that. So anyway, I then got in this essentially like an armoured vehicle. It was an armoured vehicle. There was a tiny little windows at the top, and I didn't know where I was through any of this process. And I'm looking out that window. This is 6:00 in the morning, 1 hour's sleep. Like, the most, I look back, and I say this because I think I was in a state of psychosis as well. I look back at that memory like a movie, like it felt like a movie.
Yeah.
And I looked out the window. I was like, I know where we are. And even to this day, like, I go past when I'm in the car and driving around, I drive past Lambeth Hospital every day. Right, it's very close to where I live, and essentially, I never knew it was there. And they dropped me off, and after all this had happened, I got dropped off. I still remember what we were talking about, by the way, Ian. I know this context is gone off on one mad tangent, but
that's right.
I went in, and again, I know the girl's name, and I sometimes bumped into her in Brixton, and I looked at her, and she was very unwell, and I was quite scared at this point. I was like, the holding cell was bad, the 1 hour sleep was pretty bad, everything that had happened with my family was pretty bad, and then I seen this girl, and I thought, this is really bad, and they just drop you in there like a drop in the ocean, and you're just there. And once I kind of got my head around where I was, we'll go back to your Eureka Johnson psychotherapist, I saw, and I still, to this day, there's someone else in my life now, and she's very beautiful, but she is one of the best looking, the person in my life is the most beautiful person I've ever seen, but this woman I saw was a very attractive woman, and I walked up to her, again, I can't swear, so I won't, but I said, I literally, it was almost the first thing I did when I walked in. She walked straight up to me, because she was just walking past to go to the loo or whatever. And I literally said, F me, you are absolutely effing stunning. You just have some mad confidence that you never had before when you're manic, right?
Oh, yeah. This is the thing. I was going to say, just to add a little bit more context, I'm very shy around women, especially women that I fancy. I have bags of confidence in some respects, just not that. So for me to say that to anyone, let alone my psychiatrist, is very, very, very unusual for me. But this is it. When I'm manic, I feel indestructible. My brain's going 10 to the dozen. Lots of fleeting ideas. Lots of connections, which sometimes people struggle to see the connections I'm making. Did you ever watch Homeland?
No, I've heard a lot about it, but no. I've never
Okay,
watched it.
I mean, in a nutshell, basically, one of the central characters, she has bipolar. I nearly said disorder there. I try not to.
Yeah.
And basically, at one point, she's working things out, and she has the very cliched, lots of information pinned to the wall with lots of string connecting in different ways. Now, initially, people looking at that were just like, "This is ridiculous." There's no kind of rhyme or reason to what she's done. But one of her colleagues who understands her condition, understands her as a person, starts looking at the information she's got and the way she's organised it, said, "What? Right, actually, she's on the ball. It's just a very haphazard way of doing it," which he had to kind of interpret. She had done the groundwork, and her suspicions and whatnot were right. She just hadn't conveyed it in a way which other people could access very easily.
Oh, 100%. And there's so many questions I want to ask about just that one thing. But my thing is the justification. And I said this on the podcast, on another podcast not too long ago, that sometimes something comes out of my mouth, and I've thought about it for 4 days, right? But I think
I have speeches.
Yeah.
Programmed for people.
The justification thing, I've kind of said to all of my best friends and family, basically the people that love me and vice versa, I've just said, look, I'm not justifying myself anymore. If you think I'm ill, I'm telling you I'm not. And if you don't believe me, then that's fine. There's nothing I can do about it. I've told you now. And I'm not just saying I'm not ill. I've thought about it for months. Yeah. Right? But, excuse me. The thing with that as well is I always try to justify things. I write a lot. I still do write a lot. I'm doing a series on this podcast about the writings of a suicidal thinker, and the point is I always felt a need to justify things, and I think that actually that process of writing stuff down is actually well, for me, I see what you're talking about with Homeland, and I think, right, what she's doing is all of the stuff that's going on in her head, she's just putting on a page. So when she comes up with this crazy idea to whatever the world thinks is crazy, she can actually say, well, look, they are my workings, right? And similarly to me, like, when I had the biggest manic episode I've ever had, which was, it wasn't, you know, where are we now? July. It was about just over 2 years ago. I had all these ideas. I'm not going to say mad ideas. I had all these ideas about businesses and things like that, but I didn't have the money. And I was like, well, it's fine because I'll make the money, right? Now, 2 years later, I'm well for the first time in 14 years, and all of those ideas I'm still putting into place. And all of them at the time had... I went through them with a good family friend. Again, I don't need to mention him. If he's listening, he knows who he is. But I went through all of the figures, Ian, like to a T, about how I was going to make the money to do the things that I wanted to do. And I have them on paper still. Right? I still have them either on a picture on my phone or an actual physical paper. And I'll still use... I won't go back and use it. I'll just do it again. But all of those ideas haven't changed. You know, but yeah. I had an idea 3-4 weeks ago to start a podcast that could cure suicide. And what are we doing now? Like, I don't know you. Like, from before today, you know, or yesterday. And that's what I'm saying. Like, It might sound like if I said to someone like, I'm going to make the biggest podcast in the whole entire world and I'm going to help cure suicide, people would be like, you've lost it, mate. But let's see what happens.
Grandiose Ideas. Everything you